ClickUp 2.0. In this video, I'm going to show you how it works, how to get set up, and my 3 golden rules for how to lay out your workspace so it flows really smoothly and the system works. There's lots of levels in ClickUp, which makes it awesome for organization, but it can be really overwhelming in the beginning. So I'm going to show you how to get through that. My name's Justin. I'm a workflow and work management consultant, and I specialize in ClickUp.
First, let's have a look at the structure of ClickUp, which will make it much clearer once we get into the actual app itself. Okay, so first of all, you have your account. You'll only ever need one account in ClickUp, which is awesome. And the reason for that is that you have workplaces. Now, your workplace encompasses everything that you would do in ClickUp, but you can have several workplaces, which is essentially the same as having 2 separate accounts, or 3 or 4 or more. The key point is that you pay per workplace. So if you are upgrading to the unlimited or business plans, if you have multiple workplaces, you have to pay for each of those separately. So most people will only have one workplace, but for example, I have several because each of my clients will have their own workplace that they'll invite me to, and so I can quickly jump between all of them whilst keeping them all totally separate. Within your workplace, you'll have spaces. This is your main way of dividing up all of your items into sections, and that's essentially what they are. They could be projects. If your company has a couple of large projects, you could have one space for each project. It could be one for each team. It could be one for each type of work. It's really up to you. Within each space, there are folders, but they don't have to be folders because the folders house lists, but you could just have the lists directly in the space themselves. Lists are, as they sound, lists of tasks or items, and you can see them in various ways, but we'll get into that later. So this is the basic structure. We have account, workplace, space, folder, and list. Within your list, you have tasks, and each task can have subtasks, as many as you want, and the subtasks can also have checklists. Although the tasks can just have checklists directly, it doesn't have to be couched within a subtask. So within each task, we have subtasks and checklists to help further break things down. The difference between subtasks and checklists is that subtasks have all the same functionality as a task. They're fully functional items with due dates, assignees, they can have dependencies, everything. You can have discussions on them, the whole shebang, but they are couched within tasks. Checklists, on the other hand, are very simple. They're yes/no items that can be assigned, but they're really just to remember the process you're going through. So they're particularly good for remembering all the bits you have to do on one particular task or subtask, but they aren't as in-depth as tasks and subtasks are. Now, when we're looking at our structure, there's one more piece, and that's views. Now, what views are is essentially the ability to see a certain item in a certain way. So we can have a view of this list down here, but we can also have a second view of that same list, or a third. Now, why would we want 3 views of the same thing? The reason is that they can show us different things. So for example, we could have a calendar view, and that will show us kind of the due and start dates of each task when they appear on a calendar type view, which can be really useful because you can also sync it to your Google Calendar or any other calendar. But our second view might be a board view, also known as Kanban. And a lot of people like that for a visual layout to move tasks through their workflow and see exactly where everything is. And we can have our third one be our regular list view. Views don't have to just be on lists. In fact, you can have a view that's an entire folder encompassing all of its lists, and you'll see all the tasks within all the lists all in one view. Or you could have a view that sees entire space. So you could see all the tasks and all the lists and all the folders in that space all in one view. It's also important to note that each view can have custom filters, which will be saved. So you may not want to see every task in this whole space, but you may want to see perhaps the tasks that are coming up the next week across multiple folders. And you could use this view with a filter to do that. And lastly, you can have a view across everything. So your entire workplace, all of your spaces, all of your folders, all of your lists can all pull into one place called the everything view, and you can filter and create different views on this. In this one, I have a calendar view. So these are our levels. We've got account, workplace, space, folder, list, task, subtask, and checklists. Now that's quite a lot. So it can be really good to have someone like me who's a consultant to help come in and set you up so that you know exactly what you're doing, everything's in the right place, and your system's going to run smoothly, rather than being 3 months, 6 months, a year down the track and realizing that you need to move and change and redo everything because the way you've got it laid out isn't working. All right, I'm on clickup.com. I'm going to sign up here. So first of all, it's going to take us through this wizard to get us set up with our basics, so we're ready to go. So it's going to give us an avatar. This is for the workplace. So JS red, yep, sounds good. We can choose which color we want the interface to look. For the sake of things, I'll change it to green. Do we want to use any integrations? I'm not going to set them up right now. I'll do that in a separate video. Let's say me and others. We have all the features. 1 to 5 people in my team. Name our workplace. This is a test workplace. So we're going to name the space. And this one I'm going to organize it by teams. So I'm going to say this is the marketing space. Okay, and ClickUps. ClickUps allow different functionalities that can be really useful, but sometimes we don't want. So we have the option to turn them on or off. And that way, if we turn it off, they'll kind of be out of the way and help keep the space really clear. So that's awesome. So for this one, I don't actually like setting priorities and importance for tasks. I'm going to turn that off. Tags I'm going to turn on. Custom fields, definitely. Multiple assignees, no. Time estimates, yes. Time tracking, yes. And remap subtask due dates, yes. Okay, more integrations. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm not going to import anything. And now we're good to go. So that's how simple it is. Really, really easy. Okay, so now we're in. Let's go over the levels that we went through before. So we can see down here is your profile, and this is where you can also access the different workplaces. So if we click on this, we can see this first panel on the left is settings to do with you and your profile. In the middle here are settings to do with your workplace. So if we click at the top here, we can switch between them. Obviously, I only have one there now. For the most part, I wouldn't worry about all of this when you're getting started. One thing that might be, or the two that might be useful are notifications, so you don't get bombarded with emails. And if you do need to add people to your workplace, you can do it here. Okay, so next up is spaces. If we can open this left-hand bar here by clicking on the pin icon, and we can access our different spaces there. Currently, we have the marketing space. And this second panel, which we can open by clicking on this expand sidebar button, we can see our folders and also our lists. In the middle section here is where we'll see our tasks and subtasks. And if we click on one of them, we can see inside of there where we can add checklists. So this one currently has a checklist called process, and we can add items. We can also add subtasks within here. And lastly, we have our views. So our views are in this top bar up here. We can see currently we have one list view and one board or Kanban view, and we can add further views if we wish. Some other elements to be aware of. Down here we have goals, portfolios, and reporting. That's across the entire workplace. We'll go into them later. At the top here we have the inbox, which is all the tasks assigned to you and your favorites once you create some. On the top right we have your notifications. That's anything that's kind of coming up or is overdue or anyone mentioning you in comments, that kind of thing. Quick switch, which allows you to quickly move to different parts of the interface with keyboard shortcuts, and search. Down the bottom here, we have the plus icon, which allows you to quickly add new tasks, new reminders, and notes to your notepad. And last thing, on the right of this bar up here, these are the various settings for the view. So you can change the filters, add filters, change how the view looks, and change what kind of tasks are included in that view. Now, before you start getting into creating spaces and all the various folders and lists, I would suggest you first set things up right. And so if we go into our spaces over here, and beside the marketing space, there's this ellipsis. If we click on that, we can get into, you can change the colors and the icons to this space, and even upload a custom picture just to really customize it so it's quick to see which one's which and where you want to go. But we'll go into the space settings. Now we went through this kind of briefly in the wizard before, but here we can kind of give it a bit more detail. So we've got the space name, avatar, who's it shared with. Statuses is something we didn't do in the wizard. So statuses are where we can kind of change where this task is at. This one currently just has the to do and done statuses. If we click show closed over here, we can see the tasks that are complete. However, we might have a workflow. We might want to, instead of just being immediately done, we might want a task to go through perhaps doing, reviewing, and then done. Or if you're doing a content type workflow, you might have, in draft and then reviewing and then approval, or, just idea phases, various phases that the actual tasks go through. So we'll set these up here. So we'll go ellipsis, space settings, task statuses. Now it's got some, example ones we can use here. So we can create our own custom one and add statuses, or we can use the Kanban one, which is open, in progress, review, and closed, and a couple of others. For now, we'll just go custom, and that's fine. The last thing is default settings for views. This isn't covered in the wizard, but I think it's really important to get right first up, because whenever you create a new space, folder, or list, these are the views that will automatically be created for you. Now, typically people tend to leave this as the default ones, but what that means is that later down the line, once you figure out exactly what you need, you'll have to go back through every single item and create the correct views. That can be a huge amount of work, 3 months, 6 months, or a year down the track, and I'd highly suggest you get it right now. That can be why it's really valuable to have someone like me who can set that up and get it all right in the very beginning, because obviously it's very hard to know what is right when you're just getting started with a new software. So if you do want help getting things perfect from the very beginning, you can always contact me below my consulting link. This is what I do for my clients. I get everything set up so that you don't have to, you can get straight into it. So here we can choose which views are the default ones, and we create it automatically, and then also the default view templates. So this is not just saying which views to create, but which exact settings to use for them. So we can create templates of the different views and have that template used for the view that's created by default. The view settings includes everything, the type of view it is, the various settings, and also filters. So a view doesn't have to just be a basic list of all tasks. Commonly, I'll use views on a higher level to pick out very specific types of tasks across an entire folder or an entire space. So that you can have a list of maybe, say, the calls that need to be done, that need to be synced with your calendar, or specifically tasks that are coming up in the next week. You can get really quite intricate with it and can make it really helpful for your workflow. Whenever you click on a view, you should be seeing only what you need to see to complete the work you're currently doing. And that's what I help my clients set up so that their workflows are really smooth. They just need to click through the various views to get their work done. Nothing else is necessary. And they have that set up from the very beginning. So each time they create their own folders or lists, those views are already in place. I have seen it where people are way down the line, have heaps of folders, heaps of lists, and they have to go back and fix each one once they decide how they actually want their views to look. So get ahead of the curve, get some help in the very beginning. I think it's well worth it. To create a new list or folder, we just go to this plus button here, and we can create a default one, or we can use a template that we've already set up. This is when you start to get the real value of the speed in ClickUp, when you have a whole bunch of templates set up for exactly what you need, and you can just jump straight in to having the exact filters, views, everything you need already set up. All you have to do is put in the information. There are some preset ones here that your ClickUp team have created for you, but typically you'll want to create a set of your own templates that relate exactly to your work. When we create a folder, we get similar options to with the space. For example, we can go in and we can change the statuses. Now, by default, it'll use the space statuses. They'll inherit down. But if we do want this folder to have different statuses from the space and the other folders, we can add custom ones here, which is really great. We can also add custom fields on the folder level. I'll talk about that later. And if we're creating a list, we have similar options. So we can edit the statuses for this list only, the custom fields for this list only, and we can save it as a template. And if we go to the folder, we can create new lists from a template. Lists also have the option of list info, which is where we can see the basic details of the list, any attachments. They're not attached to a specific task, but the list as a whole. Same for the description of the list as a whole. You can have conversation on this list, and you can also set a overall date for the entire list and an overall owner for the entire list. Lastly, you can set a color. There's some default ones here for the red, yellow, green kind of health system in project management to show you how healthier the set of tasks are, but you can just create your own custom color from these ones. When you select a color in list view, we'll highlight that list with that color. So for example, if we're looking at the whole space all at once, we can see that this list is highlighted in purple. We can create tasks in a couple of places. The first one obviously is in the new task line, second one being down here. If we do create a new task here, then we do have to choose which folder to put it in. So it's already selected the one we're currently viewing, so that's great. I'll leave it as that. And I'm just going to write in a task name here. Okay, we can add a description, subtask checklists, and we'll go create task. Now, I didn't show you too much of that interface because the one you'll normally work with is when you click on a task and it opens up like this. And I'll walk you through this one. So up the top, we've got the breadcrumbs of where we are. We're in marketing in quarter 1. We can move the task somewhere else if we wish. We've got statuses here, so I can just mark it complete. If I did have a more complex status set up, just quickly jump in and edit our statuses. Go custom, add a status that's maybe doing, and then review. Okay, great, done. So now if I were to go in, I would get the little triangle to put it straight to the next status, or I could click the name and choose which status it should be in. And I can go straight to complete with this little checkbox. Now we can assign who's supposed to be doing this. Obviously I'll assign this one to me, and it's giving me a reminder here. A lot of these commands you can do with / commands, but we'll talk about them another time. We've got our context menu in the middle here. We now can add tags because I do have the tags ClickUp turned on. So I'm going to put this one as, let's say, blog, and that'll come up. Tags can be renamed and then change the color as well in case it doesn't come up with the one you like. Dependencies we won't worry about just now. We've got a title and a description. Now down here we can straight away add some subtasks. So we'll say plan January, and you can add a checklist if you want, and you can have multiple checklists. Now, interestingly, you can also have a checklist from a template. This can be really useful if, say, you have a task that has a set process, and every time your team goes through that task, you want them to step through that process. So you can save that checklist as a template, and then on each time a new task is created, you can just jump that process straight in there. So that can be really helpful for standardization. I'm not going to do that right now. Obviously, we can add attachments, either going clicking add here, or dropping them down here, or clicking the browse. On the right-hand side, we've got log time, if you are using the time tracking ClickUp, estimate time, if you're using that ClickUp, which I love, I use these a ton. What our due date is. You can also set recurring tasks. So there's a couple of different options here. The first one is repeat schedule. So every so many days, or on every, say, Friday or last day of the month or whatever, it will repeat. Or we can repeat it on a trigger. So when it hits a certain stage, then it repeats. So normally you'd do repeat it on a schedule. So you can go every certain number of days, on all days, or if we went to say every week, you'd say only on Sundays and Tuesdays, for example. And you can add what time of day the task pops up. For example, if it's daily, maybe you finish the task, you don't want the next one popping up straight away. Maybe you want it to pop up at midnight, so it's ready for the next day. How many times it should go for, and when the recurrence ends, and then what gets done. So with the change due date, when you click complete, it'll disappear and then pop back up, and it's the exact same task with the same comments, the same everything in it, but the due date is now new, and it'll give you a little line saying what's happened. Or you can go create new task, and it'll be a new task with the same everything, including checklist and all that, but it won't have the same comments. It'll be a completely fresh copy. Okay, I'm not going to do that for now. We can also set watches for who will be alerted about updates on this task. And down here we have the comments. So we can add a regular comment, or we can mention someone with this button here. It's got no results currently because I'm the only one on the team. We can also mention a specific task, or we can use the shortcut ##, and then you can choose which task to mention. I've got some tasks in Get to Know ClickUp. I'll mention this one. And now anyone can click on that link and go straight to that task. We've got emojis, / commands to quickly format things. For example, if you went /, it'll give you all of these. For example, if we wanted a checklist, hit enter, and now we've got a checklist in here. And if you want to create another line, go Shift Enter. Now, one thing I have skipped here is that we can assign comments. So you can either do it immediately, or you can do it later. So these comments here, I can go assign this to me. And that's very similar as being a checklist or a subtask. You'll see it pops up over here, and it can be completed, which is called resolved. Now, when I close this, we'll see it's got a couple of little markers here. So it says that we've got 2 checklist items. None of them have been completed. There's 1 subtask. If I click on that, it'll drop down and show what the subtasks are. It'll show the tag, rename, and then we've got some columns over here. Now we can also add more columns with this plus button up here. So you see we've got date closed, date created, date updated, a whole bunch of basic ones. For example, if you want a time tracked on there, you can put that in. We can also create a whole bunch of custom fields. I'll jump into that shortly. We can also use email to directly comment on this task. So here's this email. If we copy this into an email address, that entire email will get added as a comment, which can be good when you're collaborating with people who are outside of your ClickUp. Okay, we can convert it to a subtask. Kind of do the same types of things. We can merge tasks. That'll just kind of combine all the information on them together if you do have duplicates, and we can archive it. Archive it keeps all the information there, can still be searched and found, but it's kind of out of the way, you won't see it. So that can be a really useful tool. You can also archive lists here and folders, which can be really good if you have, say, a project style layout where you finish one project and you want to keep all the information, but it's no longer relevant. You just kind of hide it in the background. Okay, golden rule number 1. This is about the smallest work pieces in your ClickUp setup. So this could be tasks, subtasks, or checklist, depending on which ones of those you use. So I'd suggest that your smallest item be one of 2 things. So first of all, a work item that takes about, an hour up to 2 hours, maximum 4 hours to complete. And the reason for that is that you want to feel productive during your day. You want to be ticking things off and feeling like you're getting things done. If you're only doing kind of one task per day or one task per several days, it starts to feel really demoralizing, like you're not really accomplishing anything. However, I wouldn't say going any lower than 1 hour, because then you're kind of making extra work for yourself. You're having to constantly go back into ClickUp to update things, check things off, and just kind of making the admin work be more than it needs to be. However, there is the second option, which is reminders. And reminders, I think, would typically be less than 1 hour in length, but it is really important to have them, because one of the main reasons for having a work management tool is that we have a way of capturing everything and guaranteeing that nothing falls through the cracks. So reminders are a big part of that, even if they only take 2 minutes. So your smallest work item, either 1 to 4 hour chunks of work or reminders. And I'd suggest that when you're thinking about how to set up your ClickUp, that you think all the way from the workplace level down through spaces, folders, and lists, and then down to your tasks, subtasks, and checklist items, to try and have it so that those last items, whichever ones are smallest, are either reminders or small 1 hour to 4 hour chunks of work. If you do have lots of tasks you want to create quickly, for example, I have this list of tasks in a Google Sheet, you can actually create them really quickly. Now, one option is to import them, and if you do import them, you can have extra columns like due date assigned to all of that pre-populate, but that can only be done by the admin. If you want just a quicker way that anyone can do, if we copy a list here, go to new task, paste it, it will ask us, do you want to create multiple tasks, because multiple lines have been detected. And we can say, yes, create 9 tasks, voila. That can also be done within a subtask. And for a checklist, go new, paste, yes, create 9 items, and there we go. So really quick way to speed up creating items. If you do have a list somewhere that you need to import, for example, we often used to have this, we would have a whole bunch of items that we needed to do that the client had given us the names of, and we just copy and paste straight in. Okay, now let's look at custom fields. So if I click on this plus button, we can see all the different types of fields that can be created, and we can also add existing fields. Now you can create fields on the folder or space level, and they will be in your existing fields as well for you to add, in case you want to kind of keep them the same across all of your lists. Okay, so first of all, we've got checkbox, yes or no, simple. We've got a date. We already have our due date and start date as standard fields, but we can add an extra date if you have like a review date, the date that something else happened. You can have multiple dates columns all on one item. We have drop down, which is just a selection of different options that you can type in. With drop down, you can only select one item per task. An email, this is particularly good if instead of these being tasks, you might have a list of clients and each one has their email for a CRM style setup. Labels are very similar to drop down, but you can have multiple per task. So for example, let's put one of these in. So we have topics of CRM, SEO, maybe building a business. Great. We can add colors. So CRM can be pink, SEO can be green, and building a business can be blue. Add column. So we've got our column here, and because it's a label, we can choose several of these options. Okay. We've got money, which is just a dollar figure. Number, which is just a number without currency. People could be a second assigned to type column. So we automatically have one by default, but we'd often have something like a reviewer column. So you'd have who's this assigned to that does work, and then we'll put in a second people column for reviewer. And you can have multiple columns. If you had perhaps where each item is a shift, you might have, say, 5 different people columns for the 5 different people on that particular shift. Phone number, similar to email. The progress auto, this gives you a little progress bar. Let's just call it progress. And it will automatically calculate how many subtasks, checklists, and assigned comments are done to give an overall percentage. On this one, it's giving us 25%. I believe that's because we've set it to in review. You can also use a manual progress bar, which doesn't calculate anything, but it gives you a start and end value. and it allows you to select how far through you think the task is. As we can see, we're starting to kind of extend over the end of the page. So I am just going to shorten some of these. Okay, as we can see, we can also drag and drop them to change the order as well. And lastly, we have rating, which is just, you can choose between 1, which is a bit weird, up to 5 emojis, and you can choose any emoji, so there's lots of options. We might choose this bicep to say how much effort this task is to get done. And create a content plan, we'll say that's 4 biceps. Now I'm going to hide a few columns just to keep things nice and simple. These will stay on the task though, but they won't appear in this view pane. Okay, and last one is we can link another task and we can add a website. Now I want to show you inside a task where these appear. So they're in this kind of line here. If we do click anywhere here, it will expand out so that each one has their own line. And we can adjust them in here as we would on the actual view itself. Even the ones that we've hidden, like main progress, will appear in here. So you can have quite a few. You don't have to see them all on your view, in your list view. Okay, now I do want to show you something just a little bit cool. I'm going to hide all of these. I might leave assignee and due date. Now, if we create a drop down, and I've done this for rosters, so let's say Monday, and we'll have a few options. We'll call it morning, afternoon, and full for a morning shift, afternoon shift, and an all-day shift. And we'll make them purple, blue, and yellow. Add column. And now I'm going to make a few more. Now you do have to set these up individually the first time, which is a little bit time consuming, but once you've got them set up once, they'll be in your existing column drop down so you can reuse them. Okay, so now you can see I've got these 5 columns here. This doesn't actually make sense for a marketing board, but it'll give you the idea anyway. And now what we can do is we can start to put in the various values for these. And we can see we can get a really visual display of kind of like who's in when and for what shifts. And this gives us a really graphical view, very similar to what you can do in Monday. So this could instead be statuses. For example, if you wanted kind of more options than just doing the various statuses over here, you could also have an extra set of statuses on here where it progresses through and kind of turns green or whatever color as you tick off each one. Okay, and now golden rule number 2, we've just talked about. Anything that needs to be seen across multiple lists, multiple folders, or multiple spaces should have a unique identifier. And what that is any column that says what it is. For example, the way I typically do this is to add a labels field that is type. Now some things can be several types, that's why I use labels. So for example, it might be a meeting. In your instance, it might be that it's really a key task or an important task, or it might be that you want to gather together all sorts of things. But I'd always add a column that helps identify what they are, because then once I have that, I can go to the space level, the everything level, whichever one encompasses all of those, create a view and filter specifically for the ones with that tag. Now, if you can imagine for a second that you have a whole list of spaces and folders and tasks, and you want to go through there and try and find all of the same meetings that need to be put into your calendar, that could be a horrendous task. But if each one is labeled, then you can simply pull them all together immediately with a filter. You can say filter type is meeting. And if you wanted several different types to show, we could use or and create type is key task and see a selection of different types together. This will hugely improve your ability to see things and report on things in ClickUp, and I highly recommend it. Okay, now what if we want to do some actions across multiple tasks all at once? For example, I want to assign a due date to all of these. I don't want to have to go in and do it one at a time. What we can do is click on these little circles. I'm just going to hide these for now. On all the circles, you can go to the bottom, hold shift, and then click, and it'll select all of them at once. And now we get this toolbar at the top here. We can see that 4 tasks are selected. We can set the watchers, we can set assignees, we can set statuses, tags, we can convert them all to subtasks, move them all, set a date on all, which is what I want. I don't have priorities turned on in this space, so we can't set the priority. And dependencies, we can copy them, archive them, delete them, or use some other commands. So for now, I want to set a date. I want to set a due date for these is in a couple of weeks on the 25th of September. Done. And that will populate in through all of them. So you can imagine if you have a long list of tasks, 30 or 60 or more tasks, this is really, really useful. If you do want to quickly select them all, you can also go into this little down chevron and unselect, select all of them. And we can also collapse this group in case you have multiple lists that are getting a bit bulky. So we have filters over here. I'll go over some of these options later on. First of all, we can see that we have the everyone mode or the me mode. So this means that in the me mode, you'll only see the tasks assigned to you. It can be really great to have a huge list of what's happening across the whole business and just immediately jump down to what do I need to do today, or what am I in charge of. If we go back to everyone, we can see everything. But we could also just choose custom people. So we can say, I want to see my tasks and also my team's tasks, but not other team's tasks. So you can get really custom with that. And you can choose if it's just tasks that you want assigned to those people, or also tasks with assigned comments. Now for filters, we can type in this search box for a particular key term. For example, if we have task, it'll only bring up the ones with task in the name. That can be useful for finding something, but usually we use this kind of filter drop down. So what we have is our active filters. There's none currently, and we can add multiple. And we can also browse and save filters. We can see we have some personal ones that you can save, and also workspace ones for everyone that you can save. Currently I don't have any here. So let's add a new one, and we can choose which field to filter on. So we have all of our basic fields, and then also all of those custom fields that we set up. And this is where you might want to have a label field, which is not really visible, but where you can put a label on different tasks to mark them as a certain thing to enable filtering. And you could do this at the list level, but you could also do it at the everything level. For example, if across all of your spaces, folders, and lists and tasks, you had all of your meetings with a meeting label on them, then you can go to your everything view and just filter through to only see any task with a meeting label. And that would be really great for creating a calendar view, syncing with your calendar, lots of cool stuff that can be done there. So for now, I'm just going to put a due date filter on, and I'll say the due date is, let's say, before tomorrow, for example. Now there's no actual tasks in there because I haven't actually set any due dates on any of my tasks, but we get the idea. Now, so that's one line. We can also add a second line, and we can choose if there's an and or. So I might have the due date is before tomorrow, and also it's assigned to me. Okay, we can go and. So it has to be both of those things in order to show up. Alternatively, we can click it to or, and it can be either one of those things, and it will show up. So this one is assigned to me. It does not have a due date before then, but it matches one of these conditions, and therefore it shows up. You can't have and or operations in the same filter, so you do have to choose one or the other. And we can save this to our view to be able to come back directly into this filtered view later, or if we leave this and then come back, it will just reset the filters so that we don't have to be constantly deleting filters. Okay, let's have a look at the different views. I'm going to jump to this get to know ClickUp list. Okay, so our basic view is our list view. We can also have a board view, also called a Kanban view, where each of your statuses will become a column. You can change that so that it's the people become the column, priorities become the column, tags become the column, or due dates become the column. And that's grouped into overdue today, tomorrow, and then the next few days, etc. And then eventually it gets to just future. It doesn't go every day for ages. And we have at the end done and no due date. We can also have a calendar view. So this will just put in any tasks that have a start or due date onto the calendar, and there's various settings to customize that. We also have the box view, which requires a unlimited or business plan in order to use. But basically what that does is that it gives you an overview of the workload. This one is just a little graph, and then we have a box for each person as well as a box for unassigned, and it shows how many tasks are assigned to them, how many are done, and how far through their kind of overall workload they are. We can expand this out to see a list of their tasks, and we can drag and drop tasks around to kind of reassign resources. So it's really good for balancing resources. Lastly, of the task views, we have the Gantt chart. Now, personally, I love Gantt charts. Some people aren't such a big fan, but this is very, very useful. So we can have a task, drag them and drop them around, and this will edit the dates. So you can change your start date and due date just by dragging it around. We can also create dependencies, all the good stuff. We'll jump into that. All of these views I do have more in-depth videos on. If you want to see those, you can go to my channel. That'll take you through all the intricacies of each view and kind of what all these settings can do. There's a lot of different ways you can set them up. Lastly, we have the conversation, doc, and embed views. These are actually quite simple. So conversation obviously creates a conversation where you can make comments, but instead of being on a particular item, it's on the list. You can also create all of these views, of course, across the entire folder, across the entire space, or across everything, as we saw earlier. So for now, we can have a conversation on this particular list. We can also have a document. So this is just a number of pages, which can have pages within pages. So you kind of end up with a book, essentially. So we have a page within there and another page within there. So you can see we have this layout of hierarchy. And here we could put maybe our SOPs, we could put notes about the client, instructions, really anything that we want to record, and this can be shared externally. Lastly, we have an embed view where you can embed anything. So you can put in YouTube, a Figment, you can embed documents, Airtable is a great one, a map even, or a form, lots of things you can do here. And that will be within your ClickUp space. You don't have to leave the site at all to interact with a lot of those things. And a lot of them are interactive. So for example, Airtable, you can add entries, you can copy entries, delete entries, do all of your Airtable work without ever leaving ClickUp. So if you are using the two side by side, that can be really, really helpful. Now it's important to note that views are comprised of a few things. So we've gone through all the different types of views there are, but when you save a view, you're saving the type of view, the columns that are visible and the order that they're in, and also any filters and settings. So you can get quite complex setups with individual views, and you can have, say, multiple list views or multiple board views, each one set up a slightly different way. Again, if you do want to see more about that, I do have specific videos on each of the views to help you see how you can set each one up. A couple of things I will point out really quickly is you can have group by in the list view as well. So for example, we're currently seeing it by status, so all of these are to do. We can also see it by person. So each person has their own chunk, which can just be really helpful to visualize what's going on for who. And then you can also group by the others as well. Secondly, we have subtasks. So we can automatically expand all subtasks, so they're just sitting below their parent. We can also treat them as completely separate. If you do want to filter and have subtasks come up in the filter, having them separate is definitely the way you want it. By default, it's compact, which is just hidden, and then if you click on these buttons, it will expand it. Okay, golden rule number 3. I would suggest that when you're designing your ClickUp setup or layout, that you design it for people. And what I mean by that is it's really common to try and think about divisions by logical kind of structures. And what that is good for is it makes it really easily to understand where things are. And there can be some really good use cases for that. But oftentimes we'll have the people in our teams organized in some fashion, whether it be in departments by projects or whether it be in departments by areas of skill. Typically, we'll have people doing specific jobs. And I'd suggest that when you organize things, you organize each, whatever level it is, maybe each folder or each space around the people that are going to be using it. So if your accounting department does a set of tasks, I would suggest as much as possible putting the information they're going to need in one place. That might be in one space in multiple folders, or if it's kind of smaller things, smaller teams, maybe just in one folder, so that everything that someone's going to work with is all in one place. And what that's going to do is reduce the amount of time they spend searching around for things and clicking between different folders. Now, favorites do shortcut this a lot, but the point is that using favorites too much is kind of like trying to fix a bad situation, whereas we want to not generate the bad situation in the first place. So first part is minimize the amount of movement that needs to be done within ClickUp, so people can jump between all the different types of work within a relatively small area, within a folder, within one space if possible. Second one is to minimize the amount of unnecessary information. So that means if you have a lot of kind of unnecessary items that you're not using anymore, I would suggest archiving them or developing a system of archiving so that you always have only what's necessary in front of you. Like just for myself, for productivity, I find that if I have tasks that I kind of know I'm not going to do soon, sitting there, it really affects my kind of focus and concentration. I'd much rather just have like the two things that I know I'm going to do today. And with any sort of work, if you have just the tasks or just the information that is really useful and necessary in front of you, it's very helpful with productivity and feeling like the system is flowing really smoothly. So I'd suggest that you, as much as possible, design your systems and your layout around your people. So down here we have goals, and here we can set a goal, and this is the overall topic. We're going to set individual targets within this goal. So for example, we might say get 100,000 views on our website. We can set an owner. So for example, if we have someone who's in charge of driving traffic for the website, our kind of head SEO person, we could add them as the owner or just leave it as no one. We can say who has access to this goal. So you can create just personal goals. Maybe you share them with just your boss, or maybe it's just your own thing that no one else needs to know about, or we can have team goals that the whole team works towards. Okay, is there a date this goal should be completed by? Your standard end date can be good to help really push things along. Description, the details of why you're doing it or what it's about or whatever else you want to put in there. Okay, so we've now got a percentage towards this goal. So now we need to create a target. And targets are measurable pieces that need to be accomplished in order to reach our goal. So we have to name the target. So in order to get 1,000 views, maybe we need to create 5 pieces of content. Okay, again, who's in charge of this particular target? If it is a team goal, you might have them assigned out. And what type is the target? So in this case, we'll probably say it's a number type, and we're trying to get to 5. So we're currently at 0, we want to get to 5, and then in order to update this target, we'll come in and type in a new number of how many pieces of content we have. Or we could just say true or false, and then as soon as all 5 pieces are done, we can mark it as true. Currency, probably not relevant here, very similar to number, it's just got the currency in front of it, and we can choose which currency symbol it should have. But perhaps the most interesting is tasks. So for example, if we had our 5 pieces of content, our 5 ideas listed out in different tasks, we could go in and add those tasks individually to this goal. And then when those tasks are marked complete, this goal will automatically update. So if we say in our list, it's this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Or if that was perhaps we had all 5 in the same list, we could just say we want to add a whole list, and that list will show up. So now I've got these 5 tasks and this list. We'll hit OK, and we'll see this goal is 0% done. Now if I go into these top 5 and I mark, say, 2 of them done, and then I'll go into this list and say mark half of this list done. And then we'll go into our goal, and we can see it's now 40% complete. So we have 2 tasks out of the 5 done, which gives us the 40%. The list isn't calculated until the entire list is done. Now, so if we come in here in the morning, this might be our default place to start and say, all right, what are the goals? What do we need to do to work towards them? Here are our things. And say, all right, I'm going to do this one. And if we click on that, it'll take us directly to that task. If we click on a list, it will take us to that list here. And that's basically it for goals. There's lots of ways you can use them, from kind of personal motivation to kind of aligning your team, or just tracking how you're going against the business's overall objectives. Portfolios are a way of seeing multiple lists in one view, even if they're not part of the same space or folder. So we'll add a portfolio, and perhaps we could create a portfolio that sees all the lists relating to client 1, or we could see all the lists that are really urgent right now, or any kind of other way you want to cut and dice it. So I'm going to do client 1, and now we can choose which lists. So I've only got a couple of lists on here, so I'm going to add list 1 and quarter 1. Now again, we can make it private just for us if you are in the business plan, or we can share it across the entire team. Okay, so this is the layout. We'll have tabs across here that are all our different portfolios, and we have our list of lists. So this is our list content and our quarter 1, and we can add more here. We can also see the list color. In this case, this one is purple, and we can go into the cog here to edit our colors and also give them some names. So I've given them a few names here for the typical red, yellow, and green health statuses, and I've also added purple for royal, just for fun. We can see the overall progress of this list, and we can toggle whether or not that includes subtasks. So you can see here I've got lots of incomplete subtasks, so when I turn that on, the progress drops. We can see how many tasks are overdue, what the end date is for this entire list, and if there's a priority. Lastly, we can see who the owner is, and that is the owner of the list, not the specific tasks. This could be really useful if you have a list assigned to each team member or to each part of a project, and you can see the overall progress as it gets complete. Any use case where things are divided meaningfully between lists, the portfolio will be really great to get an overview of those lists. And lastly, let's look at reporting. This is one of my favorite things because I love data. Okay, so we've got a few things happening here. First of all, we can choose what we're reporting on. We can report on all spaces, just one space, or some level within that space, including just one list. For now, I'm going to leave it as all spaces. We can also choose when to report on, and this will use the start and end dates to help us understand which tasks are happening in which time period. We can also select whether or not it includes archive tasks. So even though we might archive a task, it's still possible to report on them, on what's been done, etc. And we can add some basic filters to drill down to specifics. For example, if I only want to see where the assignee is me, it will get rid of other tasks. So this might be a good tool for employee reviews, for example. So in completed, we can see who has completed how many. And if we click on them, it'll give us the names of the tasks and the lead time. So that was the time from when the task was created to completed. And we can do some calculations here. Next we have worked on, and these are tasks which I have touched or done something to and kind of helped out with in some way. We have workplace points. This is typically used for kind of like Scrum points. Perhaps we'll do another video to kind of explain how this works. You can see here that I've got 3 comments that I've added. I've resolved 1, completed a task, and worked on 10 tasks. And that's kind of giving me an idea of work points. It's a way of kind of using an algorithm to understand how much work's getting done. Might be useful to you. Who's behind? That's how many uncleared notifications and overdue tasks each person has. Time tracked doesn't have any information right now, but that'll simply be for each task, how much time has each person tracked. So if you are expecting employees to kind of track time throughout the day, that can be helpful to see what percentage of their day they've tracked time for. Time estimated, similar thing, how much estimated time for each task, and custom fields. Here we can add the different fields. For example, if I add the ones that I've created, and once we add the first one, we have to go over here and add some more. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't actually have any information in these, but as you can see, it'll give us the people, and for each task they're on, the custom fields for that task. Or you can view it by tasks and see for each task, what are these custom fields. So that can be a great way of kind of seeing the various data that is being input into custom fields. Now this is actually quite minimal for reporting, but there's a trick. This export button. This button will build a report and allow you to download it, and it is far more advanced and has far more information than the display here is. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to import it into this Google Sheet just so that you can see it. So here we can see 1 row equals 1 task. These ones all have the same user ID because they're all assigned to the same person. In these spaces, and then we can see there's a different project names, different list IDs, different list names, and then we have all the different unique task names. So we have the name, the status, the due date in the text format, start date, time estimated, time spent, tags, checklists, and then all of our custom fields. So if you do want to see your custom fields lined up with your task names and then all of your HR type information as well, that can come in that report. And then you can start to make some great charts and other things that aren't actually in the reporting itself. I might do another video on taking you through exactly how to do that. So that's reporting. All right, if you found that helpful, then have a look at my channel. There are a bunch more useful videos on there. If you would like some customized help and training setting up your ClickUp, including templates, custom workflows, unique identifiers, and reporting, then have a look in the description below. There's a link there to my consulting page, and you can book a free 30-minute call with me to talk about what you want to achieve and how I can make that happen. All right, talk to you then.